All right, so my skills as a commentator are really going to be tested this time. So thank you. This is Movies with Love. This is my recording for the finale of Dexter Resurrection. I'm in a very awkward place as I am recording this right now, so forgive me for my voice being a little softer than usual. I have to be more quiet right now. But I really, really wanted to get this done as soon as possible for multiple reasons. So what I do is I watch the episode, and as I'm watching the episode live, I commentate on it, and I try not to pause or skip or do any of that. So I just try to stay on my timer and just keep it going. So now that my movies with love. So what I wanted to say is I will be talking about that painting. In my episode 4 recording, I talked about a painting, and I will get to it. I remember what it was, and I found it. I forgot the name of it, but I did remember the information on it. There was another thing about episode 4 that I did forget, and it was when I was talking about the trophies. I forgot to talk about the extension cords. There was like a wall where these guys had these extension cords around their neck. There was three different killers who actually did that. The first two at the top, and there was two in the middle. There was one at the bottom. Total, there was three. So the extension cords belonged to three different killers. One was the Hillside Strangler. His name was Kenneth Bianchi, I believe, and he was in New York, and he was actually denied parole. Um, I believe he was denied parole one day before Dexter Resurrection was actually filmed. The second one was the Dark Strangler, and he was the first sex murderer of the 20th century. And the third was I'm trying to remember, I think he killed 22 people, and I think he was the inspiration for Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt in 1943. And the third uh, killer of the extension cords was the Green River Strangler. And he was in Washington. Um, I believe he got like 71 life sentences plus 480 years or something like that. But yeah, I do apologize for. I just wanted to quickly clear that up. Um, and I did want to clear up the John Doe killer that was just a John that I talked about in episode 4. It was not the John Doe killer. It was just a John Doe. It was a duffel bag of a John Doe. It's a police term, so I do want to clear that up. We start in this episode with the vault, and Charlie's like, she's upset, obviously, at what Peter just did just now. This episode has a lot of parallels and mirrors of what happened throughout the show. And so this is more of a problem. Charlie and Leon talking right now is more of like a reenactment of sort of like Deb and Maria, which is killing a cop in a shipping container in the metal box. So it was kind of a recreation of that and saying that, this is not cool what happened, sort of thing. You see that head that was actually the head of the torso killer. Um, this trophy that Dexter grabs right now, that wall actually has the pig farmer's trophy on it or nameplate on it. And the pig farmer was his story was actually where the inspiration of the season came from. Um, that trophy belonged to Israel Keys, that Dexter just put over Batista. Now you see Dexter's really trying to shed his heart out, and he manifests our boy Rudy. Um, Dexter's really mourned just a few people, but yeah, Batista is one of them. Brian, this resolved that Dexter's talking with Brian right now. This goes into the painting, which was the painting that is shown earlier in episode 4. That scene behind Mia and then at the end scene behind Prater. That was a painting of Dante. Dante and I believe his brother Virgil. If you know the mythology of Dexter, then you know that Dexter is about a story about someone, Dexter, this being going through the cycles of hell. And every season of the original show and New Blood focused on the nine circles of hell. And the villains each reflected the main embodiment of hell. The story of Dante's Inferno does follow Dexter as Dante, and in a sense, his brother Brian as Virgil. You know, that spiritual kind of person that's there. But Virgil was said to be one of the guardians of a section of limbo of hell, which the first season of Dexter was about limbo. That means the soul can't really move on and it's kind of stuck where it's at, which is a reason why when Dexter talks with Harry, why he can also talk with his brother, because Brian represents the guardian of limbo, and in limbo, that soul is unable to escape. So he's forever in the limbo state connected to Dexter, which is why he constantly comes back. That chainsaw that Dexter just threw, I don't know whose chainsaw that is, but he does say, "I'm not dying here." And Dexter really saying, "I'm not dying here," is him saying, "My soul is not going to remain trapped in this metal box." This trophy safe is a representation of history, but it's also a representation of the metal cage of imprisonment that Dexter has locked his inner child in, as well as Prater has been locked in, and so has um, Cooper, when he was in prison. Right here, so when Dexter says, "I'm not going to die in here," that's him saying, "I'm not going to leave my soul in the past. I'm not going to leave my soul in here." And he throws the chainsaw. And that was basically, I want to say that that chainsaw was a representation of the chainsaw that cut Dexter's mom into pieces. And throwing it was him kind of letting go of the fact that his soul is stuck there. Um, right here, when a few scenes ago, he says, Harry asked Dexter where his priorities are. Are you afraid to die, or that you're trying to protect your son? And then Dexter was like, I can't really protect my son if I'm locked in here. Basically, that means he can't really protect his own innocence, his own inner light, his own innocence, that gift that God has given him. He can't protect it on a soulful level. None of us can protect the better parts of ourselves if we are locked in a box, locked in a imprisonment of our own, past. Um, and so, also when Dexter says both can be true, that was a reference to Dexter Original Sin, where Dexter, or where Harry met with Brian, and he said both things can be true, and gave him his speech in the finale of Original Sin. This scene right here, where Harrison calls Lance, is actually very significant because Lance represents the demon angel of Harrison, whereas Elsa represents more the light angel, you can say, and Gigi represents more of like that balanced. But Lance representing the dark angel of Harrison means that if Harrison ever wants to pursue the dark, then he will go basically through Lance. So the symbolism there was, very significant as to why he called Lance, um, and to get him into Prater's mansion. That was an investment of, I want to follow the dark side, so help me get there. And I do apologize. I do apologize for missing. Oh, so the painting. Yeah, I did talk about the painting. That painting was yeah. And I do apologize if I am forgetting a few other things. There's a lot of stuff moving very fast. I'm in a very awkward position, and I do apologize if I did miss anything. Mia's looking at these files. It shows Mia, and the funny, interesting thing is it says active. So I don't believe Mia's actually dead. I think that was like a fake body, or she was given something like with Hannah, and I think Mia is still alive, and her file says active. Let me see there's a date here, March 26th, 1982. That was the year when I believe Ronald Reagan was president, and he was doing something with the military budget and trying to like increase the budget for the military, doing something with taxes or whatever. And so I thought that was an interesting reference to what Leon's doing with the police right now in the gala. Interesting historical reference. And also, Ronald Wilson Reagan had three letters in his name, three letters in each of his names, which equaled out to 666. And so you will see that a lot in this. Leon Prater kind of representing the devil in such a way that how he controls and manipulates things, and how he indirectly controls, makes it seem like people are choosing these things, um, when really, so I just thought that was an interesting reference there. So yeah, back in the vaults, um, that head that you see and run underneath it, there's like a bag. That bag is from the beach murder. It was a Gilno, I believe. It was a beach murder that happened, and he actually got caught because of some pizza crust. I guess he had some pizza crust, and he it was 1993, and it was something to do with like the police were watching him, and they got the pizza crust that he threw away. They were able to get his fingerprints off of it, and that's what got him caught. um, April, about a few months before the show aired, he they found two more of his victims, like in April 2025. So that was something interesting, and that was like the bag of on top of it was the Cleveland torso murder, and he beheaded all of his victims. I believe only three of them were ever identified. Um, a police force called the Untouchables were formed and pursued him and caught him, and it was also in the early stages of forensics. And so the early baby stages of forensics is how they were able to get him. The reason why that's important is because back in Dexter Original Sin, there's a movie poster where Dexter and Deb and her friend were talking from the rental place. There was a poster that said the Untouchables, and so the Untouchables were a group of cops that worked with early forensics in like the '90s, I believe, to did do some unorthodox things to get criminals. So I just thought that was a interesting reference there, and I always regretted not catching that Easter egg in Original Sin, so I thought I'd make it up now. These black ties with the white coats, you can say it's a stretch, but it can represent yin and yang, and the importance of you know um, a shadow heart with the angelic expression type thing, and but yeah, I just like that color correspondence. And again, please do forgive me for missing some stuff. There's a lot of information I'm trying to give out. And I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to talk. And I know there was a big something that went on already that I missed. Oh, it was um, Brian. So Brian represents evil in Dexter's heart. And so when Dexter and Brian were talking in the vault, and Brian says, "I'm glad I killed you when I had the chance." That was him moving on from his guilt of not killing Trinity when he had the chance, and pulling the knife out on him in the kitchen. Which is it was an improvised line by the actor apparently by Michael. So that was also him. That was also Dexter's confirmation of him turning, getting over that mirror effect, and also moving on from that. But also with what Brian was saying, Brian represents evil, and so a lot of times you'll have this whole 666 ideology, which is you'll get to a point when you're about to have a revelation in your life, and that's when the devil comes and hits you head on. And so everything that Brian was trying to whisper in Dexter's head and Dexter's mind was basically like an attempt of the evil trying to pull Dexter back into the dark side. But that will happen when we get to the best parts of ourselves. We're about to evolve. We will always have that darkness, that evil, you know, try to come back to try to tempt us. And it tempted Dexter by saying, "Oh, you should have done this. You should have done that. You should have stayed with those guys. You shouldn't have killed me. You had so many chances to, follow down this dark path, and you should turn away against the light because everyone you try to save will never accept you. Versus, everyone who will accept you, you killed them, you got rid of them, and that's just the hero's journey in a sense. And as in like it was kind of a reference of how the world will always crucify Jesus. If Jesus did come back and try to save us, he'd be the first person that everyone in the world would tear apart. You know what I mean? It's kind of a reference to that. Whereas those who those who try to save will always be destroyed by the ones they're trying to save, and that's just unfortunately that's just how it is. That's just one of the rules of heroism. That's one of the rules of sometimes even being a parent to a child. You want to do everything for your child, and they become like your reason for wanting to kill sometimes. When you see Dexter trying to blackmail Charlie, it was very important that Charlie did not become a victim to Dexter's plea. When Dexter was like, "Oh, this is the deal. This is how it's going to go," and Charlie makes a deal of her own. That was very important, simply because Charlie's character represents guardianship, and her not subduing to Dexter, which represents darkness, means that darkness will not be the protector, will not overcome the protector of loved ones. And so Charlie had to keep her character intact, had to keep her character, in control and have the upper hand in a sense, just to fight back and say, no, I'm not going to be a victim to the darkness, and I'm not going to rely on the darkness to be my protector anymore. And this revolt also kind of encapsulates that philosophy in a sense of when we go through PTSD, our soul is trapped in a shroud of darkness, and we rely on darkness to keep us safe or make us feel safe, make us feel protected. But when that happens, we deny ourselves the ability to have intimate relationships with life itself. Having an intimate relationship with life itself means to thrive in life, means to pursue our dreams, to fall in love properly, to connect with people, just to enjoy being alive. PTSD kind of takes that away from us. And that is actually shown in an earlier scene when Harrison is with Gigi in bed and Dexter is calling. And that was a reference to that, which is, um, you know, being taken away from intimacy of what the beautiful intimacy at what life gives us. And, so having Charlie do what she did to Dexter right now and getting and really walking away was important to show that guardianship does not have to be associated with darkness, and that Dexter does not have to rely on the imprisonment of the shrouding darkness to feel safe or to keep himself safe or to keep who he love's safe. Um, Dexter's phone dying in this scene, you can't you can't always do the best you can with what you know. You have to have a sense of faith. You have to have faith, and you have to jump in with both feet. And Batista's phone dying in this was basically that opening of letting God or faith come in and say, "Hey, you can't always rely on logic. Sometimes you have to rely on your heart. You have to rely on the unknown. You have to rely on faith and something, a bit beyond what you can understand. You just have to take that leap if you really want to, open up that door and embrace that inner light. It was important that Dexter hugged Harrison and pulled Harrison into the vault because that symbolized Dexter allowing his light to enter the metal box, the metal box. Um, Harrison really represents light, uh, so this that was a symbolism of Dexter embracing his light and pulling his light into the metal box of the shipping container, things like that, and just like reclaiming, hey, I want my light to be in here. So that's why Dexter hugs him, and pulls him in. It was a symbolic thing. Um, Also, Dexter, yelling at when he yelled at Brian and threw his chainsaw. And I know I'm so late, but he says, "I'm not dying here," and the phone rings, and it's Quinn. Quinn. I'm not entirely sure what Quinn represents to Dexter, but Quinn really is sort of like that person that Dexter. Quinn represents some kind of a bridge for Dexter's psyche, and that phone call was basically just like basically God looking out for Dexter. Basically, like, hey, um, I got your back, sort of thing, and just higher up forces, just doing their thing. And it really did show that Dexter, if you don't want to die in here, then here's a slither of a pathway for you to invest in. And if you invest into that slither of a pathway, then you'll get yourself out of this. That phone call was basically that little tiny bit of light or hope that was provided, and Dexter was able to find it and say, I want to invest in this. I couldn't find this painting that's in the back right here. There's many different versions of it, but I like it how it's about a man and his dogs, his hunting dogs, and how now Prater like has a shotgun toward the dog, or the guy in the coat has a shotgun toward the dog, the rifle toward the dog, showing that he might shoot the thing that was once loyal to him, that was once like a best friend, and now he has to like kind of aim his guns at it, and it's kind of separation of that loyalty, breaking of that loyalty. And you see this being played out. Scorched Earth is a military reference that Charlie just said. It's That's about destroying evidence, and it's basically just a military term of you know. So you see, so this scene with Charlie, when Charlie and Leon separate, you see Vivian and this officer here come into frame of the picture. Is basically like the secret life of the secret life of Leon, kind of being switched off with the mask life, which was Vivian, and this officer, which represents like this is who I am to the public. I'm seen as a hero, you know, and her, which is like everything is proper, everything is neat, nice, and it was like him switching out the truth for the mask. Um, the these broken plates belong to the Golden Gate killer, the Golden State killer, and he actually got his name from a killer novelist. Her name was Michelle McNamara, and I just thought that she passed away. Apparently, she had a lot of drugs in her system. But when you're a author who writes about murders and serial killers, and you know all of a sudden you end up dead from a bunch of drugs, it's like really. But her name was Michelle McNamara, and she was a writer, and she helps coin the name Golden State Killer. But also, this officer that Leon Prater invites on stage was named McNamara. So that was an interesting Franklin McNamara. So it was an interesting dynamic there. So yeah, those broken plates were the trophies of that serial killer, real serial killer. The axe that Dexter threw that actually cut Charlie's arm. I know I'm so late in mentioning that too. Belonged to the Axemen of New Orleans. I don't think he was ever caught. I don't think they ever identified who that was. But yeah, yeah. So you see this fight between that happened a few scenes ago with Leon and Charlie at the painting was really Dexter's internalized self saying, "Hey, my guardianship is not going to be associated with the devil's tactics anymore." And so that was that. But now you have Leon here pointing the gun at Harrison, saying, "Hold on, nope, you're not going anywhere." And this is really addresses how is Dexter going to handle not letting his lifestyle affect hurting innocent people anymore. Like, how is he going to properly address this? And so, Dexter's trying to get away. He's trying to get away from the vault. He's trying to get away. But it's like, Dexter, even though you're trying to escape the vault is still there, and you need to address the energy of it. You have to really address what's inside of that vault. And, you can't just leave it. And so that's why Dexter keeps getting pulled back in, pulled back in. Batista's ghost on the other side helps him out with the fingerprint, and Dexter's able to mourn him, help his soul move on. But this song right here, this was the same song used in episode 4 when he was going down. This time, Dexter's going through this elevator, is descending down into hell for his light, whereas in episode 4, Dexter was descending down into hell for his darkness. So this time, he's going back down into hell, which is Leon's mansion, in a sense of trying to save his light from it. And that is true. If you are going to be resurrected, or if you are going to reclaim your light, you do have to go through hell. You can't be afraid to go through it, to come out of it. So, Dexter's here to reclaim his light. And now you have him arguing with this elusive part of who Dexter is, and that's Leon. And, he's really like addressing, like, how are we going to do this? And this again is a parallel of Dexter losing and Harrison both losing Rita, their mother, and history being played out again. I actually had a list of how history is being played out. It was with Charlie and Leon, with Deb and Maria, in a sense, and there was the metal box, which represented the past, present, um, It's just, there's some other things too. I'll get right back to it, but the problem where Leon made, or the mistake he made, is the Dark Passenger, that unnamed shadow that was around Dexter, doing all of these random things that would hurt people around him. In a sense, that puppet master. Um, that puppet master got blood on his hands, and that allowed Dexter to target that. It allowed Dexter to be like, oh, it's not just about murdering people, it's about the fact that circumstances causes people to get murdered. And there was a circumstance that caused Batista to get murdered, as well as LaGuardia and other people. It was circumstances, and that's what Leon represents right now, is that invisible circumstance. So the second that Leon actually killed Batista, Dexter understood that value of, oh snap, circumstances of this lifestyle puts innocent people in danger. It is addressed energetically, mentally, psychologically, but not really verbally in the show. And so that was the lesson that I talked about. I hope that Dexter had to learn with Batista's character. And you see him learning that lesson now as he pursues Leon. And this is another mirror effect where Dexter points at his chest and says, "Shoot me." Um, this time, Dexter says, "Shoot me," not to destroy an innocence, but in a sense to save an innocence, um, fixing that problem that he did in New Blood, which caused another trauma. Harrison stabbing Prater allowed Dexter to allowed both him and Dexter to fix the trauma of, I couldn't save my parent, but now I did. Versus, couldn't save my mother, couldn't save my father, but no, So that was a moment that they both cured that trauma by pursuing circumstances of evil and saying we're both going to kind of work at it to get rid of it now. So that was another mirror effect. I love Leon's acting, Peter's acting. Sorry, death is a natural part of life. I feel like that scene was improvised. He says, "Yeah, he's like, I can promise your son money, a life of luxury." When Dexter in this scene says, "You promise my," he's such anger, Dexter. When he says, "You promise my son a life of luxury versus a lifetime of trauma," I think that was Dexter actually saying, I love that when Dexter pulls his hand over his head and comes down, he says, "Given to me by my father," a reference to Harry being another subconscious link to the higher up, but the reference to season 6 of when he was said, "I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a serial killer," and he was over the cross, Jesus, God's cross, and he did that motion of re-understanding his role in everything. But I'm so sorry I cut myself off earlier. Oh yes, when he was saying Dexter has such an evil look in his eye during this kill. It's like a special kind of evil, though, like a different, unique kind of evil in his eyes. But anyway, uh, when Dexter was talking with um, Prater, he was saying, "You promised my son a lifetime of luxury versus um, trauma." I believe that was him, Dexter's revelation of him facing that plot point of the end of season 8, him choosing to leave him and Hannah versus him staying with him and Hannah. And I think that was the lifetime of luxury, which was the family, versus lifetime of trauma, which was him abandoning him. And I think that was Dexter really addressing that he really did make the wrong choice, and him saying, um, I don't want my son to have, generational trauma. I want him to have generational wealth. And I think that um, Dexter's addressing that Dexter's choice to just go into that hurricane and kill himself was not really so much as his choice, but it was more of the circumstance that led him to do that, because it was the wrong thing to do, and it was this darkness that was compelling Dexter to go into that thing and not be with his family, not choose light, not choose love, but to choose, I'm going to go right straight into the storm. And him saying that it's a prayer just now was Dexter's soul addressing that and being able to move on. Yeah, and as what Dexter said earlier, I'm not dying here. If you have trauma and you live in the past, you are going to die. You're going to be stuck dying in there. So if you don't want to die, if you want to stop your soul from dying, then you got to get out of there. You know, you can't stay in there forever. And when life offers its opportunities to escape, then you escape and you go and embrace and enjoy the best parts of what life does have to offer you. And you accept that. You accept that these good things are here to save you, to save your soul, and they are the gifts that God has blessed us with. And we have to really appreciate those blessings, whether we believe in God or not, or want to follow God or not. God's light is still here, and God will always appreciate us embracing it. Um, those pens, those little knives that Dexter got was from Doctor Death. I believe that was his name. He actually died a day before his birthday. Um, I can't remember what his name was, but his name was Doctor Death, and he killed about 250 people. So in real life. So that's who Dexter got the scalpel from just now. That's Doctor Death's trophies. Real serial killer, as most of them that I've actually mentioned, if not all of them that I mentioned so far with the trophies. And here's Dexter saying, "I don't want to remember you." Um, and here's Dexter killing off the elusiveness, that puppet master in his heart, in his field, not even in his heart, but in Dexter's psychological field, his karmic field. That it's yeah, Dexter really saying, it's not a trophy, but he wants to get rid of, and that's him. Yeah, the ex Canton Clubbers Club. I know one of those rifles, one of those guns, I believe was a gun that shot JFK, but I don't remember which gun it was, which rifle. I think it was that main rifle. But anyway, um, I feel like this is the most important scene. "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees. Every time you heard this song, Claudette was chasing death. Every time this song came on, "Staying Alive," and this is the first time that you actually hear this song playing, and she doesn't have her headphones on. She always has the headphones on, and she's pursuing death when she hears this song. This time, she is open, and everyone is hearing this song, and she's dancing to it, and she's listening to this song with life. And that really shows that this song represents a huge transformation of being stuck or being trapped and being obsessed on this path of death. But then, what does it actually look like to share this intimate part, and with someone who you care about. And what does it feel to listen to the same song when you're alive versus listening to a song when you're obsessed with death? There's a difference. And Claudette listening to that song in death represented Dexter being in death. And now that Dexter wants to embrace life, the scene happens where Claudette listens to the song in a lively atmosphere. And there's a huge difference between sitting at a desk, listening to it, stuck in your own thoughts, stuck in isolation, versus being open and embracing the world and smiling and dancing and enjoying your presence with people who you care about and understand and love. And maybe you don't love them, but maybe you understand them. And that itself is a form of love. I'm being silent. I'll be, when the alarm stops, I'll come back. Sorry. I was saying, yeah, to, really be surrounded by people that you love, people that you care about, and doing this thing that you once did on your own. But, you may be connecting to people that you may not love, but you understand, and sharing intimate parts with people who understand can be a form of love too. Fortunately, you have this section where he is obsessed with death and the past, and that's what destroyed Batista, was that obsession. You know, this ship that Dexter is on is called the Getaway, which was the name of the finale of season 4. Here you have Batista earning respect. Um, but earlier, when Dexter tells Harry, "Hey, both things can be true," that's an important lesson that Dexter understands, that both good and bad can coexist, and they don't have to fight each other. They may be opposite forces, but they are still sometimes necessary. And sometimes they don't need to fight each other, but they need to evolve with each other. And, maybe we can all learn from that. That sometimes we do experience our symptoms, one side engulfs the other, but both sides need to put each other in check sometimes. And just to evolve. I love how Dexter left the file for her. He likes her. That's how Dexter, he likes her, I think. And so he kind of helps her find some closure with that file and says, "Hey, this is who you're looking for. You got this." So she can find her justice and she can find her closure, unlike Dexter not letting Batista find his closure. So, Dexter really left that note for her to make up for what he didn't do for Batista and LaGuardia, which was, you know, letting him suffer with that consequence, that I need the closure, I need the closure. And he's helping her get closure, so he left the file for her. Um, so again, parallels. That was another parallel. And oh, and so Dexter saying both things can be true was Dexter choosing the path of Harry versus choosing the path of Brian, which you see in Original Sin when Harry and Brian were on the rooftop. This is Dexter mentally choosing Harry's side over Brian's side within himself. In that scene, he emphasized that there's 6 garbage bags per body. The fact that there's 3, I wonder, this this thing that Dexter's saying right now, was a reference to season 4 when Dexter was in his prison cell and he said, "I want to be rid of it. I want to be rid of the Dark Passengers. Just enjoy my life." enjoy it with Rita, and I want to be done with this darkness forever. And he was in a prison cell when he came to that conclusion. But in this scene, as he's talking about it, he doesn't reject that parts of himself, he accepts it and finds a way to have a place for it. And then in that way, he finds freedom. And you see the Statue of Liberty behind him, and he's out on the open water. So that's him saying, I'm free within myself. I'm free within my revelation of the understanding of myself. Versus in season 4, he was imprisoned in the revelation of him not accepting himself. So I love the parallels there. Um, um, yeah, so then Dexter also says, you can lean on me, and or Dexter says he can lean on Harrison, and Harrison can lean on him. Sometimes sometimes darkness needs to protect the light, and sometimes that light needs to have depth with the darkness. There's this saying that says the devil's hands bring depth to God's blessings. And that is basically the dynamic of what Dexter meant in this, is that sometimes that darkness creates depth, but light can only shine as deep as it can go. And sometimes darkness just provides light to do more of what it can do. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And you guys have an amazing time. Thank you.